Hello, dear students. Today again, I'm back with the chapter Life Process of Class 10 Science. In this topic, I'm going to discuss about the transportation taking place in the body of the human beings. The transportation of substances in the body occurs by means of the two systems. Number one, that is the circulatory system, also known as the cardiovascular system, and the other one is the lymphatic system. Now let us see what are the components of the circulatory system. The blood vessels such as arteries, veins, and capillaries. And the third one is the heart. These form the components of the circulatory system. You can see in this picture the venous system, the arterial system, as well as circulation of the blood in the body. We'll be discussing some of the topics in detail in this video. Now, blood and its composition. Now, what is blood in fact? Blood is a red colored fluid connective tissue that flows in our blood vessels. What are the components of the blood? What does the blood consist of? Blood consists of liquid part, which is known as the plasma, and embedded in it there are the blood cells, which are also known as the blood corpuscles. So you can say 90% of the plasma consists of the water, and remaining 10% constitutes of the various organic as well as other inorganic substances. The blood corpuscles. Now, the blood corpuscles, there are three types here: the RBCs, the WBCs, as well as the blood platelets. In this flowchart, you can easily see how the composition of blood has been shown. I'll be starting from the blood platelets first. Blood platelets are also known as the thrombocytes. They're very small and their number is near about 250,000 per cubic milliliter of the blood. They especially help in the blood clotting at the site of the injury in the blood vessels, and in this way they prevent the loss of the blood from the body. In case if the count of blood platelets decreases in our body, then again it's an indication of a disease. They have a fixed lifespan near about, you can say, 3 to 7 days, again and are formed in the bone marrow. About RBCs, if I just I'll be taking all these topics separately here. Let us see the RBCs. RBCs are also known as the erythrocytes, as you can see in the diagram. They are the biconcave structures here. Our RBCs are enucleated. They don't have the nucleus. They contain a red pigment known as the hemoglobin, which help in the transport of gases in the body. The amount of hemoglobin in the body, it is about 12 to 16 grams per 100 milliliter of blood. Remember, in the females, it should be about 12 to 14 grams, whereas in the males, it should be from 14 to 16 grams per 100 milliliter of the blood. The count of the RBCs. The total count of RBCs per cubic milliliter of the blood is 4.5 to 5 millions. RBCs are formed in the red bone marrow. They have a definite lifespan that is of 120 days. And after that, they are being worn out, especially in spleen as well as in the liver. Remember, if there is a deficiency of hemoglobin or the count of RBCs, what will happen? Will suffer from a disorder known as the anemia. And remember, anemia is the root of all the diseases. Second comes the leukocytes. Leukocytes are also known as the WBCs. They are the soldiers of our body. They help in protecting our body from various infections. So it means they help in maintaining the immunity of our body. There are different types, either based on the type of the nucleus present in them, or in this picture, you can see they are being classified on the basis of the granules present in their cytoplasm in two types. Number one, it is being given granulocytes, and then second comes the agranulocytes. In granulocytes, there are three types. You can say eosinophils, basophils, and the neutrophils. Whereas in agranulocytes, there are two types of WBCs. Number one, the monocytes, and the second is the lymphocytes. They are also formed in the bone marrow. What is the count? The count ranges from, you can say, 6,000 to 8,000, and sometimes you can mention even the 10,000s per cubic milliliter of the blood. And again, in case of certain infections in our body, the count of the WBC increases. Blood vessels now. Blood vessels are the arteries, veins, and the capillaries. You can see in the picture, the artery with the red one is being shown and the vein with the blue one. And in between, you can see the net of the blood vessels, which are the blood capillaries. Arteries now, remember, the first point whenever you write the difference between the arteries and the veins, please ensure that the arteries are the blood vessels that carry the blood away from the heart. It means they are the distributing blood vessels. Whereas the veins, they are the collecting blood vessels. They collect the blood from the tissues to the heart. Then the second point you can mention, the arteries carry the oxygenated blood, but exception is there, except pulmonary artery that carries the blood from the heart to the lungs for the purification. And veins carry the deoxygenated blood from the tissues to the heart, except pulmonary vein, which carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. There is various other differences also between them, such as arteries. Their walls are thicker as compared to the veins. The lumen of the arteries is wider as compared to the veins. Arteries do not have any valves in between, but they have the valves at their openings in the heart, and these valves are called the semilunar valves. These are the valves. Arteries are deep seated, whereas veins are superficial, you can say. Arteries, the pressure of the blood is, or you can say, blood flows with high pressure, whereas in the veins, the blood flows with a low pressure. Coming to the capillaries, these arteries now you can say ends into the fine blood vessels, which are known as the blood capillaries. And these blood capillaries, they are made up of a single layer of cells known as endothelium. All the substances or the gases, you can see the nutrients, the waste, they are being diffused through the walls of these capillaries. Capillaries unite, and then they forms the venules, and the venules now they lead into the veins. Heart. Heart is a pumping organ of our body which is made up of the cardiac muscles. Heart is located in our thoracic cavity in the center, but it is slightly tilted towards the left. It is conical structure, you can just see. It is of the size of our fist. If you see the measurement of the heart, it measures near about 12 centimeter and into 9 centimeter. Heart is being protected by the double membrane known as the pericardium, and in between the pericardium, a fluid known as the pericardial fluid is present. This keeps the heart moist. Heart is divided into two parts mainly. The upper part is known as the atrium, and the lower part is known as the ventricle. If you see the structure, internal structure of the heart, we can see internally the heart is divided into four chambers here, human heart. The two atria means the atrium is also being divided into two compartments known as the left atrium and the right atrium by means of a wall known as the septum. And the septum is known as interatrial septum. In the same way, the ventricles are also being divided into left ventricle and right ventricle by means of a septum known as interventricular septum. Our heart, you can say, now you can say in the heart, we have the complete left part and the right part. The left part of the heart. This one is the left part of the heart. This consists of the pure blood or the oxygenated blood. Whereas the right part of the heart, it consists of the deoxygenated blood. The blood vessels you can see in the heart, in fact, here you can see the before coming to the blood vessels here, I would like to mention about how where the blood comes in the heart. The blood comes in the heart in the atrias, the left atrium as well as in the right atrium, and the septa do not allow the mixing of the blood. So from the atrias, the blood moves into the ventricles. So you can say the atrias opens into the ventricle by means of small aperture. Here you can see the aperture. And this aperture is known as atrioventricular aperture, or you can say AV aperture also. And these apertures on the left side and right side, both of them, they are being guarded by the valves. And these valves are on the left side, you will see the bicuspid valve or also mitral valve. Whereas on the on the I'm sorry, very sorry, on the left side there is, this is the left side. Here you see the bicuspid valve, or because the mitral valve, and on the right side here it is the tricuspid valve, so which guards the atrioventricular aperture. So through this aperture, the blood keeps on flowing in the ventricles. And these valves, they open downwards into the ventricles, towards the ventricles. And when the blood starts moving from the ventricles to upside, what happens to these valves? The valves closes. So you can see here the two major veins, the superior vena cava as well as the inferior vena cava, they bring the blood from the superior part as well as the inferior part of the bodies and drain it into the right atrium. From the right atrium, it moves into the right ventricle, and from right ventricle, you can see the passage of the flow of the blood. It moves through this pulmonary artery into the left lung as well as the right lung. Then similarly, on the left side, you can see the pulmonary veins here. These pulmonary veins, they drain the pure blood, that is oxygenated blood, into the left atrium, and from left atrium the blood moves into the left ventricle by means of this bicuspid valve, or you can see this aperture, and from here the aorta, they move into the aorta. This is the aorta here, and then it is being distributed to the different parts of our body. This is the path of the flow of blood circulation. In the exam, it could be asked, the diagram can be given, and you can be asked to show the path of circulation of the blood through all the chambers of the heart by means of the arrows. Or you can be asked to label the various parts like the bicuspid valve, the tricuspid valve, the arteries, and so on. Remember one more thing here. The ventricles, the walls of the ventricles are thicker as compared to the atrias. Why they are thicker? Because they have to pump the blood. And besides this, in case if I say the walls of the left ventricles are more thicker as compared to the of left ventricle are more thicker as compared to the right ventricle. Why it is so? Because left ventricle has to pump the blood to the different parts of the body by means of aorta. Aorta keeps on branching and supplies the blood, so it has to work up to a longer distance. So its walls are more thicker as compared to the right ventricle. Our body shows double circulation. Now, what is this double circulation? When the blood flows twice through the heart, in each heartbeat, you can normally say, which is also known as a cardiac cycle. We'll just study in the next slide here. Then that is known as the blood is known as the double circulation. So double circulation can be studied in two parts. You can see the pulmonary circulation as well as the systematic circulation. These are the components of the double circulation. So pulmonary circulation, pulmonary as the name indicates, associated with the lungs. So the circulation of the blood from the heart to the lungs and from the lungs back to the heart. This is known as the pulmonary circulation. In the same way, systematic circulation, the flow of the blood from the heart to the tissues and from tissues back to the heart. This is called the systematic circulation. The flow chart now, what is the flow chart shows? Here this shows the complete flow of the blood to all the chambers of the heart. You will see this as VC is being written, IVC, both of them. These are the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, major veins of the body. They drain the deoxygenated blood in the right atrium. From right atrium, it moves into the right ventricle, then right ventricle to pulmonary artery, and pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. And from the lungs, now the purified blood or the oxygenated blood now moves back to the heart, to the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, and then left atrium to left ventricle. Left ventricle pumps the blood into the aorta and finally to the tissues. And in the tissues, the carbon dioxide is released. This deoxygenated blood is being carried back to the heart by means of the superior vena cava as well as the inferior vena cava. This is a picture or the diagram showing the double circulation. You can easily see the lungs, the heart, and the venous blood as well as the oxygen blood. Now the cardiac cycle, I just told you. What is the cardiac cycle? You know that I use the term heartbeat in fact. Heartbeat means, see, normally how many times the heart beats in a minute? It's 72 times. So one beat means the flow of blood through all the four chambers. How quick it is the process. And this is known as the cardiac cycle. The diagram shows how the blood is moving through all the four chambers. In the first case here, it's being written here. The first case, you can see the atria are filled up with the blood. This one diagram. When they are being filled with the blood, then what will happen? They will come in the contraction stage, and the blood will be squeezed into the ventricles. This condition of the atrias, when the atrias comes in the contraction stage, we call it atrial systole. Systole means the contraction stage. Now blood has moved into the ventricles. When it comes to the ventricles, now they are empty. In fact, you can say the atrias. And now atrias comes the relaxing state. The pressure of the blood increases in the ventricles. So the ventricles now they comes in the contraction stage. We call the ventricular systole here. And what happens to the atrias? When the ventricles come in systole or contraction stage, the atrias relax. We call it atrial diastole. Diastole means relaxing stage. So when the ventricles come in systole, so what will happen? They'll pump the blood. The blood will move to our upper chambers, but the blood cannot flow back into the atria due to the presence of bicuspid and the tricuspid valves. They prevent the back because they open only in one direction. So the blood will move into the blood vessels as you can see over here. When the blood moves into the blood vessels, so a time comes that the pressure of the blood in the blood vessel increases as compared to the ventricles. The blood starts moving downwards. When it moves downwards, then the semilunar valves at the opening of the blood vessels they close because they also open only in one direction. This direction they open. When the blood flows backwards, they closes. In this way, you can say in the heart, the two sounds are being produced. One sound when you can say this was bicuspid valve and the tricuspid valves they close. We call it as lub. And second sound when you can say when the semilunar valves at the opening of the blood vessels they close. This is called the dub. So the two heart sounds are being produce. And after squeezing the blood into the blood vessels, what happens? The ventricles also comes in the resting state, and we call it a ventricular diastole. So you can say the systole and diastole, both of them, they come are continuously taking place over here, and finally this process keeps on going in the heart. Blood pressure. I've already mentioned here the ventricles, when they come in the systole, they push us, you can say, they force the pump the blood into the blood vessels. Now the moving blood or the flow of blood here, it exerts the pressure on the walls of the blood vessels, especially the arteries here, and this is known as the blood pressure. The pressure exerted by the flow of the blood on the walls of the arteries is known, or the blood vessels is known as the blood pressure. Again, blood pressure can be studied as systolic pressure as well as the diastolic pressure. Systolic means the contraction stage of the heart, whereas the diastolic pressure is the relaxing stage of the heart. And the normal blood pressure of the human being is 120 to oblique 80 millimeter of the mercury. 120, this is upper pressure, that is systolic pressure, and 80 is the diastolic pressure. If there is any deviation in this, then it means we have certain problems of increase or decrease in the blood pressure. We should immediately go for our blood checkup of the blood pressure. We should check up our blood pressure. BP is being measured by an instrument known as sphygmomanometer. Then now there are certain digital devices also which easily measures our blood pressure. Increase in the blood pressure is an indication of various diseases. There are certain diseases associated with the heart which can result in the cardiac arrest, okay, angina, heart attack, stroke, and so on. So we should be very much careful for our functioning of the heart. At the last, now, this is the lymph. I've told you in the beginning that two systems work in our body for the transport of substances. The second is the lymphatic system. So lymphatic system, it consists of the lymph and the lymph vessels. First of all, what is the lymph now? Hey, one thing you have to remember that when the blood flows through the blood vessels and finally to the blood capillaries, due to the pressure or the flow of the blood in the capillaries, what happens? Some of the blood plasma, it oozes out, it just filters out from its walls, and it fills up the spaces between the cells. Here it just fills up. And this is known, these are the tissues, and the fluid which is present in between the tissues is known as the tissue fluid. So what is the tissue fluid? In fact, it is a plasma, but the same composition as plasma, but it do not have the blood cells. It do not have the proteins, the bigger molecules. So what is the role of it? How it, if it just keeps on out moving out, what will happen? How does it comes back into the blood? So in case if it do not move in the blood, there will be a deficiency of water, or you can say in our blood. So what the nature has created, this, you can say, tissue fluid, it just starts flowing in the closed vessels which are called the lymph vessels or lymphatic vessels. And this tissue fluids again is drained back into the blood. So it comes in the circulation. It has the WBCs, remember. It do not have the RBCs, do not have the platelets, but it has the WBCs, a type of WBCs known as the lymphocytes, which help in maintaining the immunity of our body. One very important feature of this tissue fluid, it is that it helps in the transport of absorbed fats from the intestine to the blood, because the fats, they cannot be absorbed by the walls of our capillaries. So they are being carried in the bloodstream by means of this lymph. Thank you. This is enough for today. See you in the next PPT with a new topic, and that is the excretion. Thank you. See you next time.